Let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats. A lot to get to here. Arizona obviously still coming off a big loss against Arizona State. We're going to recap that, but at the same time, we are also going to talk more about this upcoming trip where Arizona can answer some of the questions. Let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, we got a lot to get to on this show. First and foremost, though, we are going to talk about, obviously, some Arizona basketball. We need to talk a little bit more about that Arizona ASU game first. Now, there were some very troubling things that came out of that game. But first, I want to give a few kudos, though, for what some good things that happened. First, Ced Henderson. Big fan of Ced Henderson on this show, as many of you, I'm sure, know. And big reason why is because he comes in there, does the job that he's supposed to do. And not only does he do the job that he's supposed to do, he does it with, wherever you need him to be, he's going to be. He's going to play good defense. He's going to be a timely shooter. And he's just going to do a lot of really good stuff out there. Again, love Ced Henderson. Big fan of what he's going to be able to do. Now, Pelle Larsson has also played really good ball. A lot of people get on Pelle Larsson. I'm not going to get Pelle Larsson. I've been wrong on Pelle Larsson. He's always going to have a few. Odd plays right there where you're kind of like, "What are you doing?" And that was, and at the end of the game, that was kind of a perfect example right there, where you're like, you can't just be giving him that wide open look. But whatever the case may be, he's done some good things. He's been able to get into the paint. He's been able to make some real plays out there. And he actually appears, unlike some, he appears that he actually wants to make plays out there. So again, certainly give some kudos there to Pelle Larsson on what he's been able to do. Now we got to talk about some of the bigger fish. We're going to get back to Azuolas Tubelis right here. With Azuolas, it's very it's concerning because you watch Azuolas and think to yourself, what exactly does he really care? And I think that's a fair question, to be honest with you. The main reason why is because we saw last year in the NCAA tournament where he kind of folded. I mean, well, he did. He folded. And you know what? People got in his ear. He didn't handle it very well. And it was obvious after a while that he was not in a good spot. So that, that obviously is something that you worry about it's certainly something you worry about if you're an Arizona fan. And it started to show itself again, to rear its proverbial ugly head. And it's an ugly head. I think the main thing you worry about, though, is where exactly are you in the grand scheme? Does he want to be that dude? Because body language is everything, I think, in a lot of elements. And Zoo's body language a lot of times just isn't very good. As a matter of fact, not only is it not very good, it kind of sucks. And that's something that people watch. And you watch it in the Arizona State game, and there were some real questions there. So when he's diving on the floor, that's a lack of or when he got the ball against ASU and he essentially then just handed it to ASU for a 3-pointer, was just kind of like, oh, all right, well, just another day at the office. That stuff drives Arizona fans up a wall, and it should drive Arizona fans up a wall because you're the best player. Show some emotion out there. Now, again, I don't need fake emotion, but if he's gonna struggle in those realms, then people are gonna call him out on it. Then you look at another guy, Kirk Kriisa. At this point, we know what Kirk Kriisa is. And it's not really a put down to Kirk Kriisa. He's going to try really hard. He's going to be a sporadic shooter, but he's also going to not shoot very good percentages, and he's not going to play very good defense. So that is always going to limit you out there as to what you can do. That is I think that's certainly a concern. So those are two guys that, theoretically could be back next year. And if they're back next year, then I think you want to see more from them, certainly, than, especially Kirk Kriisa. You want to see more than what he has shown to this point. And I think both those guys kind of limit you a little bit, mainly Kirk Kriisa on the perimeter, if that's what you want. Now, look ahead then to UCLA USC. First, we got to talk about USC. USC is going to be a challenge for Arizona because, again, you watch SC and they've got some really good aspects to them. First and foremost is they're long and they are athletic. They're athletic on the perimeter. Stop me if you've heard this before from an Andy Enfield team, but that's just, that's kind of how they're always going to be set up. And as we've seen, Arizona has had problem with length in the past. And, if you're, I think that's something that could certainly rear its head again against against USC. Certainly not something you want to have rear its head against SC, but it's something that certainly could. It's going to be that's going to be an interesting game for, I think, a lot of people to follow out there. And it's something that people can't look past because you know what? You look past it, then you could lose that game. And then all of a sudden you start looking at a 4 seed, a 5 seed. Nobody wants any of that right there. People want Arizona to be in that 1 or that 2 line discussion. And if you're in that 1 or 2 line discussion, then you got to feel pretty good about yourself. Now, SC though, what can they do? They got 2 guys that can really take over a game, as we talked about before. You got Boogie Ellis at that point guard position. Boogie is a good player. Now, again, he's not super efficient. You're never going to watch him and think to yourself that that's a player that you're is going to be 13 of 20 from the field, but he can go for 30 points on a given game. And if he goes and players like that, you're always a little concerned about because you go for 30 points on a given game, you can keep, you can have some bad things drop your way. And again, and then Drew Peterson. Peterson's a fascinating guy because Peterson initiates the offense, even though he's 6'9". And he's 6'9". He's 205 pound. He's 6'9". He's 205 pound small forward, but he's long. It's kind of the Luke Walton thing where, Jason Gardner would bring the ball up the court and then have Luke Walton initiate the offense. There's a little bit of that in play with Drew Peterson, but he can also score as well. Now, as far as who's going to be guarding these guys, you would certainly imagine that at that point guard spot, Courtney Ramey is probably going to guard Boogie Ellis, and Courtney Ramey should guard Boogie Ellis because he is more equipped to be able to do that than Kirk Kriisa. You're probably going to try to put Kirk Kriisa on a Kobe Johnson, something like that, but also don't know how that's going to work out necessarily. So that's kind of that. Now, I would imagine at that small forward spot, you're probably going to look at Pella Larson. But that's a difficult matchup for Pella because Pella, while a very good defender, is 6'5", and Drew Peterson is every bit of 6'9". And being every bit of 6'9", that is that's a little bit of a concerning aspect right there. Watching Peterson or Sed Henderson. That could be, but Sed's also not as physical as Pella Larson, so that's a little bit of an issue as well. Watching this team though, Arizona's going to have the big men play well because up front, USC's got 2 bigs that are good, and not only are they good, they are at about 6'10", Joshua Morgan, and then at about 7 foot, Vince Iwuchukwu. Those are both players who are able to block shots, finish around the hoop, guys that some Arizona players have had some problems with in the past. And with that, you're kind of thinking to yourself, all right, what are we going to do right here? And I don't really know what that case is for Arizona. We will find out, though, obviously. Now, and then on the perimeter, you got Kobe Johnson, you got Trey White, both those guys, athletic wings. So what does Arizona need to do on that side? We're going to talk about that in a second. But first, let's talk about FanDuel. All right, FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment count. FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. This is the time to bet. This is the time where you want to bet because it is basketball is in high gear all across the land. And is there anything that's more enjoyable to bet than basketball? No, there's not. So you got NBA, you got college, you got all of that stuff. And like I said, it's all in high gear right now. This is where you want to bet. And not only do you want to bet there, FanDuel.com makes it easy. FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege. Check it out. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back with you. Now we're going to talk about what Arizona needs to do in this game against SC. Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, what does Arizona need to do against USC? The big thing is you got to get Azuolas Tubelis right. Now, I'm going to just keep saying this, and I think I'm just going to keep saying this until the end. You got to get Azuolas Tubelis right. You get Azuolas Tubelis right, everything else works off of there because then you've got about a guy who is you've got a guy who can drop 30 points, 10 rebounds, and then when he drops 30 points, 10 rebounds, everybody else's job is easier because he's drawing so much of that attention right there. That's what you need, though. You need something like that to occur. And if that can occur, then Arizona is going to be much better for it. Oumar Ballo will be much better for it as well. Oumar Ballo, down low, get him the ball, and knowing that he's going to be guarded by the secondary defensive peak, that things become easier. Then you'd like to see Courtney Ramey become that dude where, he just moves differently with the ball. And not only does he move differently with the ball, he's able to score at a more efficient level with the ball than anybody else on this team. That's what you want right there. But again, this all starts with Zoo, in my opinion. I'm also of the opinion that with Zoo, now you go to Kerr Kriisa. Kerr, just make your open shots. I don't expect him to do a lot that he can't do because honestly, Kerr's limited. Kerr's going to always be limited. Not a great player, but he's always going to be limited. And, we can sit here and complain about it all we want, but at the end of the day, Kerr is always going to be limited. And there's nothing that I don't think that Arizona fans can do about it. So don't try to force something that isn't necessarily there. Now, at the wings, keep doing. Pelle Larsson, said Henderson, keep doing what you're doing right now because right now you look fantastic. Right now it's very impressive what we're seeing out there. Both of them have, I think, fit their role to a T. And not only have they fit that role to a T, they've also been the team that are the two guys who have been kind of a steadying influence on Arizona, to be honest with you. When said Henderson is in the game, you feel pretty comfortable that said Henderson is going to make a pretty good contribution right there. Because he doesn't do things that are dumb. He's also a coach's delight. Now, with the rest of this team, then kind of there, you'd like to see Kylan Boswell bounce back a little bit because again, Kylan Boswell he's 17. Stop me if you heard that. But Boswell is a good player. And not only is Boswell a good player, but he's young right now. So you need him to be able to, you need Boswell to just hopefully step back. And if you step back, then if you step your game up, then you're going to be good because this guy, I want him to have the keys to the castle next year. Not only do I want him to have the keys to the castle, I want him to be able to not only facilitate, but I think you've got to find a guy that's going to be a little bit more of a scorer as well. And I think he's got every bit of that capability right there. I'd like to see, especially with young guys, it's important for them to be able to bounce back when they're called upon right there to be able to bounce back. And Boswell's right there. But again, now, what would a win mean for the University of Arizona going into that UCLA game? We're going to talk about that next. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with you. Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, if Arizona were to beat SC, first of all, it's another good win because you got to remember that Arizona's got a lot of good wins. Nobody's looking at Arizona and saying that, man, they don't have good wins. They're talking about their bad losses. But as the selection committee put out with their one-time 16 ranking, they clearly value good wins over bad losses. So getting that one win right there, I think, would be incredibly important because, again, SC is a good win. I think people are still kind of missing the boat on SC, to be honest with you. You watch people, I don't think they quite get how good SC is. And not only do they not get quite how good SC is, once they get into the tournament, I think that you could find out that they cross off a lot of boxes in that they are athletic. They can shoot, and not only are they athletic, they can shoot, and they're pretty well coached. I know a lot of people like to diss on Andy Enfield, but I like Andy Enfield. And Arizona, this would be another good win. You would also have a second win right there. Then all of a sudden it gets kind of interesting then because UCLA then, yes, they would be ahead of Arizona in the standings. Totally get that. Not saying that, but SC's looking at Arizona's resume, UCLA starts looking at Arizona's resume and said, "Man, that's something that we got to keep pace with because Arizona's got better wins than we do right now." And if Arizona were to beat us, then it becomes somewhat interesting right now. It becomes somewhat interesting because Arizona would have beaten UCLA twice. Granted, UCLA would have won the conference, but you look at the out-of-conference, Arizona is significantly better, and all of a sudden then it becomes a little fascinating then if you're an Arizona fan or if you're a UCLA fan because, man, what happens in the Pac-12 tournament at that point? Do you need to be able to beat Arizona to keep that, to get that number one seed? And I don't think that anybody really knows that question, but it does put the pressure back on UCLA to a certain extent. And not only does it put the UCLA back into contention Arizona back into contention, Pac-12 becomes really important then. Remember all those years that Lute Olson basically said, "I don't want to be here. I don't want to, I don't want to be doing anything in the Pac-12 tournament." Well, a lot of times Lute went in there knowing that he had the number one seed out west pretty much locked up. And not only did he pretty much have the conference locked up, he didn't want to be there. So I don't want to say they threw games, but it was clear that nobody was really sad when they lost. This is going to be all kinds of fun, though, because you're going to have a rivalry aspect in play. And not only are you going to have a rivalry aspect in play, you're going to have teams that are, battling for higher seeds in the NCAA tournament as well. So again, but it's first things first, though. You got to be able to beat USC. Now, tomorrow we're going to come out with my prediction, tell you what I see happening in this game. But again, a massive, massive, massive game for the University of Arizona. You lost ASU. You don't have that margin for error back. So you got to be able to try to get that back, put a little bit more pressure on the teams that you're facing. I think Arizona is going to come out and acquit themselves well, but that's just a tease. You don't get the prediction until tomorrow for whatever it's worth. Okay. Appreciate you all. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Go Arizona. You have been listening to Locked On Wildcats. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we will talk to you soon.